Okay. Greg, glad you could be with me today. Would you give the students, where the hell did you go? Yeah.
Shut the fuck up. I'm just getting my water.
How about explaining your career? What are the jobs that you've taken to get where you are? What was the situation that you encountered? What did you feel was needed? What did it take to put it together, etc.? You're on.
You're too funny. All right, so Cornell, obviously, graduated Cornell, went to work for Mike Levin at Days Ends of America in franchise sales and development. Spent a bunch of years there. Mike was actually working for Henry Silverman. At the time was with the Reliance Capital Group. Henry, you guys would probably know from Blackstone, and then subsequently Apollo. So I spent, I think, a total of about 12 years working between Mike and Henry's leadership. Mike left and went to Holiday Inn. Henry took Days Inn and then merged with Hospitality Franchise Systems, became the world's largest hotel company by one metric at least, which was the number of units in the system, not by revenue. But I was really the guy running the engine, franchise sales and development, which was obviously the primary revenue source.
Wait a minute.
Spent a bunch of years there.
Why was that the primary revenue source? I would have thought that the number of guests and average roommate occupancy were the big metrics.
No, the big metric was the number of units sold, because that drove rooms, and more rooms in the system, obviously more revenue. So it was all about selling franchises, bottom line. And you had very little control over having an independent franchisee manage the hotel revenue and occupancy, or RevPAR. That was their job. Our job was to get more units in the system.
What did you find, what was Days Inn when you left Cornell for that job, and what did you feel you needed to make it, and tell us about its operation strategy. That's the course. How does it fit with what you saw and what you did?
Great question. So the reason I took the job Days out of Cornell, there were a lot of great opportunities back in the mid-'80s. There were a lot of great opportunities in business then. Marriott was really burgeoning. There's a job I would say was number two for me, Residence Inn with Jack DeBoer. And if you could follow the Residence Inn story, that revolutionized the extended stay business in the hotel world. But the reason I went to work for Mike at Days Inn was because I thought I could do hundreds of deals there versus tens of deals somewhere else. And I knew Levin would literally open the floodgates. So for a guy like me who loves selling, having an infrastructure and a culture that supported sales was spectacular. And we basically created a production line approach to selling franchises. When I got there, Chris, you'd love this. I walk in, I'm a kid out of school. I don't know a lot, but I do know how to sell and I do know how to close a deal. And I'm sitting down with the existing sales force, which was 3 guys, and I remember asking Wally, who was the lead sales guy, I said, what do you guys do? What's your process? How do you sell? And he said, basically, we just wait for the phone to ring. I'm like, you're right. So all that did was ring the bell for me. Holy cow. This thing is going to be low-hanging fruit. So we went from 3 sales guys. Those 3 guys did not make it. Levin put me in to run sales. I hired 45 guys. We sold 30-something franchises the year before I started. We sold 245 the next year. My best year was 518, which is 2 every business day. And we worked nonstop. Round the clock, made a ton of money, broke 5 world records in a row doing that.
But Greg, now explain to the students, all the kids, all the students work for organizations or have sales operations, some it's marketing, more of a mass marketing thing. What was the core capability or the capabilities that were required to create this production juggernaut?
Yeah. Levin was brilliant at making sure that anybody who was in the organization was involved in sales, if not immersed in sales. Now, there were only 45, 50 of us who were actually selling. But if you're in franchise services or quality assurance or accounting or human resources, you had some direct connection to sales, meaning you either went through my sales course, which was a proprietary course we put together. You did routine drive-alongs or just made sales calls with the sales guys. You were assigned to individual customers, franchisees. So Mike created this incredible, perfectly aligned culture around the franchisee is our customer, and we have a zero defects approach to making sure they are happy. I don't care if you're in HR or accounting, sending out bills or collecting money, or actually closing a deal like Cass is. The franchisee is king, and you will do everything you possibly can to make sure it's a zero defects relationship with that franchisee. The other thing we did was we were absolute beasts about hiring franchise salespeople. And I don't think I interviewed, well, first of all, our interviews were brutal. In a room like this, I'm sitting here in my office in Newport Beach where the windows don't open. I would have every franchise sales candidate sit in the room. I'd interview them for an hour or two. Then I'd stop in the middle of the interview and say, go open that window, will you? It's getting a little warm in here. The good franchise sales candidates would call me on it immediately. It's like, hey, asshole, those windows don't open. But the people who went up and struggled trying to open the window, obviously I never hired those guys. But we had a very tough, rigorous process to screening out the very best franchise salespeople. 30 years later, all those people that we hired in those days are captains of franchise sales or development or operations teams in the hotel business today.
Correct.
Because it was the single best recruiting and training process in the business.
What would be an average closing percentage on, say, 100 franchise prospects? And who are these prospects for Days Inn? Who are these people? What would be typical throughout the business as a closing percentage? And what was the closing percentage of your sales operation?
I mean, I'm reaching back, so don't take these numbers verbatim, but it was probably sub 50 when we got there, Chris. And that was with the phone, waiting for the phone to ring type of mentality. By the time we recruited, trained, and by the way, we certified all our sales guys. So you couldn't get out in front of a customer until you're actually certified in a 9-step training program. But we would have been in the 70, 80% range. Now, make sure we understand each other. Anybody who owned a hotel was a potential client. So I'm not taking it from that addressable market. I'm talking about if we qualified somebody and we disclosed them in a Federal Trade Commission process, which you had to disclose. So if I contacted you and you said, look, Cass, I'm sort of interested. I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no, I'm sort of interested. I said, okay, before we have another conversation, Chris, I have to disclose you. Here's the FTC form, sign it, send it back. So from that disclosure or that acknowledgement as we logged it into the system to closing, we would have gone into the high 70s.
Versus what at Holiday Inn before Mike went there?
Anybody in the business was, we were probably a 2 or 3 times multiple of anybody in the business because of the way we approached the business. We scrubbed it, we qualified it hard. You didn't get in the door unless we asked a whole bunch of questions. I wouldn't have disclosed you unless I thought I had a chance. And that would have been very different from most people, where a lot of people would just call in and get disclosed. If you called in, we would have reciprocated and scrubbed you before we sent out a disclosure.
Greg, what?
So, I mean, not overly complicated, but just a qualifying process.
But what what are the concrete sales production process value adds that translated into a 2 to 3 times productivity differential between your sales production process selling a Days Inn franchise, which, let's face it, was not up in Marriott territory. I mean, were they just better people? Was it your sales process? What did it?
No, there are a couple of things. I mean, first of all, the 280 odd Days Inns that were company-owned and operated stores, when we bought the company, did extremely well on a RevPAR basis. So comparatively, there was a very good ROI on the stores themselves, on the hotels themselves. So, and it was really easy for an owner to understand that if they had a 120-room hotel next to a Days Inn, they were performing below the RevPAR metrics for the Days Inn. So more rate, and it's always about rate in our business, or in that business, because rate has a huge flow-through. More occupancy means more cost, but if you can run the hotel at 70% and get a $100 rate or a $200 rate, it's a no-brainer, obviously, the flow-through with that incremental rate, okay? It's just a no-brainer. So Days Inn in the luxury budget segment, which is what it was called back then, had a very high RevPAR premium, very good RevPAR premium. So the owners were very comfortable making a transition to a Days Inn product because they knew they'd get more top-line revenue. It was up to them to manage it through the middle of the page and make money. The other thing that was really soft, but very important, was there was an enormous amount of momentum about this was the horse to ride. We were the sweetheart in the business at the time. Mike Levin had a huge reputation, and when you sign a franchise, I mean, keep in mind, these are 20-year relationships. So you're thinking about what's it going to be like to live with this group for 20 years, and the Marriotts and the Holiday Inns and others had bad reputations. They were very internally focused, they were very focused on their bureaucracy, and they were very unfriendly to the ultimate customer, the franchisee. And Mike turned that upside down. We revolutionized the attention we gave to our customers. We had an entire department who did nothing but reach out all day long and say, Chris, are you happy? What are we doing well? What can we do better? That fed a best practices program. That fed a whole bunch of initiatives that drove revenue, then drove quality, et cetera, et cetera. But it started from that simple mentality, put the customer first.
You're telling me,
those two things.
You're telling me that Marriott did not figure this out? And so, I mean, what did they achieve by having this, we are Marriott and you need to do it our way? What was the trade-off that you made? Was Marriott just wrong, or were they right for a different set of reasons? How did you?
Well, life's a case study, right? There's never one perfect answer for a case study. You can't argue with Marriott. They're the world's largest frickin' hotel company today. But their model then, I'm going back to 1985, right? Their model then was franchising was a disaster. You lose control, and if you lose control, you will lose quality and customers and market share and stock price. Our model was you can do a ton of business if you franchise. And so we went for a massive, decentralized, leveraged approach as opposed to a centralized, tightly controlled approach. And who's to say either one is right or wrong? I mean, our stock was in the top 5 on the New York Stock Exchange for 5 years in a row. You put $1 in on day one, 5 years later it was worth $2,000. So pick a winner. Marriott got about a 20% a 20% return during that 5-year period. We got an 80% return. Okay, but that's a 5-year stick. Look over decades. With what Marriott's done, they've done a hell of a job, but we just had a different model.
Got it. So, where did you go? How were you taken away from Days Inn? What happened next?
So I did a bunch of deals with those guys, made a lot of money, enjoyed the business, learned a lot, but like sort of really thinking about what are you moving towards and what are you moving away from. And I wanted to move away from working in a public environment where I was frankly being managed by people who didn't know the business, the analysts, the guys on Wall Street. And I spent more time doing presentations to the street than I did making deals with customers. So one of my customers was a family out here in California, and I was very close, very friendly with them, and the chairman said, "Shit, Cass, we'd love to have you come work for us." And that's really what happened. It was that simple. Underwriting the deal wasn't that simple. But once I looked into the company and I saw the potential, it got really exciting, because here was a little company that was an owner-operator, had a huge balance sheet, tons of cash flow, but lacked systems and structure, and frankly, an articulated culture. Of course, there's a culture in any organization, regardless of whether it's codified or not. But what I saw was an enormous potential to ratchet that. And I think, honestly, Chris, I saw a fantastic opportunity to diversify. So I remember my initial conversation with the family, with the chairman and his brother and his father. "Hey, guys, we got to diversify." And they said, "What do you mean? We've got hotels in San Diego and Los Angeles and San Francisco. We're very diversified." And I'm like, "Yeah, how about we get outside one sector, I should say, and we get diversified." So anyway, that's how we decided to take some of the gains that we'd made in the hotel and real estate business, and we got into, our first business was in health sciences, and today we have the 6th largest generic drug company in the business, and we got into financial services, we got into technology, and a bunch of other stuff. And when I started with the company 20 years ago, our EBITDA was 100% hotel, and today it's less than 5%.
Greg, these people were hotel operators. How did you succeed in pharmaceuticals, financial services?
Well, a lot of the things that make businesses successful are actually pretty rudimentary, right? So it starts with people, and you can be agnostic about the business you're in, but you still got to manage people, and if you don't have great people, you'll never have great results. It's that simple. So we kind of developed and codified our own thinking around what businesses do we want to be in and why, and then can we be the wind beneath the wings of best-in-class operators? And if we can, then we'll take a shot at it. So we're not a classic PE shop. We're a family office, and we're very hard to define because we're not passive. We don't just make an investment and then ask people to show up every quarter with a bunch of reports. We're very active. We're strategic. We often take operating roles in the businesses, and it restricts the number of deals you do, but you don't have to do a lot of deals. We do big multiple deals. We look at a deal, and if we can't get it 10 times on our money type of thing, then we won't waste our time. If it doesn't have huge scale.
Excuse me, are you referring to Tarsadia Hotels or Tarsadia Investments?
No, I've transitioned to Tarsadia Investments. Tarsadia Hotels stopped existing in 2011 when we did a reverse merger, and I know you're going to ask, why'd you do it? We did it for 2 reasons. One was we were very, very active in the investment space, and I had people who'd worked for me for 10 to 15 years and had done an heroic job, and I wanted a meaningful way to say thank you. How do you give back? I mean, now these guys had come along and they were in deals, they had equity in deals as we went along, but we wanted to do something really meaningful. And frankly, you always ask the question, what do you really want to do? Well, what I really wanted to do was stop being a day-to-day operator and be much more involved on the strategic side of the business and leveraging investments. So the way to do that was to sell the operating business. So we didn't sell it, but we gave it to the management company. So at Tarsadia Hotels, we were kind of an umbrella platform, and we had development, investment, and management under this umbrella called Tarsadia Hotels. But God, we were investing in everything, and hotels became less and less important. So we gave the management company, the management business, to the 10 VPs, senior executives, who ran that business. We sold it to them for $100,000, It was a couple $100 million business. They are now part and parcel of the world's largest independent hotel company. They're now part of Ambridge. And we gave the development company to the guys who ran the development business, and they are now a couple of $1 billion development company. And we kept the remnant company, which was really the core investment strategy business, which is the pharmaceuticals, financial services, technology, and real estate. So everybody won. It was a fantastic reverse merger. Everybody did extremely well. There was a now perfect alignment between your work and your wealth creation.
What do you mean?
Perfect. You could get up and figure what you did that day either added to, was accretive to, or wasn't to your own personal net worth. And that was the home run. Perfect alignment between work and wealth creation.
Greg, when you say we gave the management business or we gave the development business, Greg Casserly doesn't give anything. What happened?
I told you we wanted to say thank you. There had to be a meaningful way to give back to everybody who created. We created a lot of wealth in this company, and we're a very complicated tax structure business. A lot of things are done through 1031s. It's hard to get partners into 1031s, and I won't bore you with all the intricacies. So we needed a meaningful way to actually create long-term wealth, and that's why we did the reverse merger. And when I say we gave, yes, the platform, for example, on the management company side, was a couple $100 million in revenue, and we gave the entire systems, infrastructure, IP, everything that went with that business to the group. They paid us $100,000. We had to have some consideration for the IRS, and then they had all the upside and all the downside. So, despite what you think of me, Chris, yes, we gave it to them.
Okay, Cass. Then what that tells me is you saw an opportunity to create a whole lot more wealth with Tarsadia Investments, which
I wasn't shy about telling you that. I wanted to stop operating the day-to-day business. Look, the most precious resource is time. If I'm going to spend my time, I can leverage it to do a deal that can maybe net 10 million, or use the exact same time, energy, resources, intellect, skill, wisdom, experience, whatever it is, and maybe do 10 times that. So it's not complicated to figure out where you want to go. The hotel business, as good as it's been, has a very specific cycle, and it's all capital market driven. The capital chases deals. When the capital is risky, people stay out of it, and they go to multifamily or they go to something else, right? When the capital's easy and the returns are good, they flood into it. So that's not us. My cost of capital, that's private equity. My cost of capital can't compete with a REIT. They might have a 3 in front of theirs. So they come in and they bid the price up, because that's what low cost of capital will do, plus leverage, of course. And now I'm out of business. I can't steal deals anymore, and I only want to buy stuff. You only make your money on the way in. You never make your money on the way out. It looks like you do on paper, but you did it. You made your money on the way in because you bought it right. And I can't pay retail. I don't want to pay retail. So we started looking for other high leverage, high opportunity, high multiple businesses. There are always the best returns in businesses that you own and operate. And we've done that. I've done hundreds of hotel deals. Couldn't give you a total count, but it's in the several hundred. And they're great, but they're limited because they're single assets, right? I might make $50 million on a deal, great. But on an operating company, we can make billions.
So, Greg, sounds like you got the business of hotel deals, and maybe you had a product line that was turnaround hotels that were distressed. Another one was franchisees, but you knew that business and cold and had I guess a zero defects mindset. What gave you the capability to understand the generic drug business? When you say financial services, what are we talking about? And the technology, I mean, who did you have in this hotel operation who understood beans about any of that stuff?
Nobody. Absolutely nobody. You know that. Absolutely nobody. So the model's really simple. 3 things. Only 3 things do I use to underwrite a deal, at least in the first round. Who are the operators? Because we won't do a deal without a best-in-class operator. What's the idea? And how big can it be? What's scale? So who are the operators? Won't touch a deal unless someone is literally married to the work. And I mean that in every sense of the word. If they don't think about it every second of the day, if they don't pop up like toast, thinking about the business, and last thing they think about going to bed, I don't want to talk to them. I'm not interested. And I got to tell you, Chris, I've had, over the years, hundreds of people show up. Got a great idea, here's what it is. I had a guy who had a brilliant renal denervation tool, right? It's a very successful protocol in Europe. Doesn't have a pathway here in the States yet, but it's a treatment for hypertension, by the way. But anyway, blah, blah, blah. So the guy comes in, pitches, got a brilliant solution, but he says, oh, I just want to do this part-time because I want to go back to Arizona and invent more shit. I said, well, go back to Arizona and invent more shit, but you're not getting any of our money. I only want someone who is absolutely 100% focused with every fiber of their body, with every strand of DNA about the business they invented and they love. Otherwise, forget it. So that's number 1. Best in class, but it's their calling. It's because they truly believe the only reason they're on this planet is to make that business successful. So I look for guys who sold their class ring, their motor car, their home, leveraged every piece of jewelry their wife has, and they're living in an apartment with 3 kids on top of each other, but they've never given up on the business. That's the guy I'll invest in. Because if you're willing to give everything to the business, all I got to do is get behind you. All I'm going to do is give money and counsel and a little love and nurturing along the way. But I'm relying on you. So best in class, completely passionate, immersed, in love with the business operators. End of story. Can't get there? Don't show up. Second, what's the idea? The idea, obviously, from a business standpoint, has to have real legs. You got to be able to underwrite it, understand it. I don't like complicated businesses because you can't tell people the story. I violated that rule on occasion because I thought it was super compelling, but financial services is not really complicated. It's really easy to understand. Actually, generic drugs is it's a very complicated business, but generic drugs is easy to understand. You just got to slug it out. But if the business idea, the underlying principle of the idea is a good idea, and we can check the box, and we're not doing something that's illegal or unethical or is going to be harmful in some way, then we go to the next step, which is what's the scale. And I just have to know that we can do at least $100 million in revenue, because if it's not $100 million in revenue, it's really hard to get good financing. It's hard to get ratings. It's hard to get the street or any financial institution to take you seriously, which means it impedes our business to sell it to ourselves, do refis, take a dividend, and ultimately sell the business for a reasonable multiple.
Greg, what the class doesn't understand is who is the investment company? How do you have it organized? How many deals come in as raw material input? Who screens the person? Who screens the idea? Who determines the scalability? And once that decision comes up positive, what's your production process in terms of who gets it to structure it, do the due diligence, all that sort of thing? Because this is a very different kind of business than the hotel business, right?
Sure, yeah. So look, the organizational structure of the group, we're very, very private, so it's hard to get good info on us, but
Why?
Because we like it like that. It's a conscious choice. We don't talk to reporters. We never do press releases. We don't do any PR. We just focus on what we do with our partners. That's all we do. A lot of people have a different model, and like I said, not right and wrong. It's just it's not for us. I don't want the PR. I don't want the time. I mean, reporters don't do any value. Now, our portfolio companies can operate separately and differently from that. I'm just talking about us as the holding company.
Good.
We never own less than 70% of a company. I won't do the deal if we don't have significant control, a supermajority at least. And the way the deals come in, Chris, is the first deal, by the way, the generic drug business came through a guy that used to work for me in the hotel space who knew a guy who was trying to get going in the generic drug business. And he called me and he said, I know you don't know anything about generic drugs, but this guy's a great guy. And the rest is history. We have 20 people here in the building in Newport Beach. Virtually everybody is a conduit for deals. All deals are socialized once a week before anything formal happens. So we just talk about them like you and I, Victor, we just sit down and just rap. We don't take it too seriously. If we think, yeah, you know what, that tends to make this every Wednesday at our deal meeting. If it makes some sense, then we appoint a working group with a principal, and then the deal takes on its natural course where we do some underwriting, we do a 2 or 3 page memorandum. If it goes to the next step, then we do a full-blown memorandum, investment memorandum, and then we go to investment committee and make a decision on how much dough we're going to put in. So we figure out all that stuff, and sometimes that can happen the fastest it's ever happened is a few days, and usually it's probably a couple, 3 weeks or longer.
A few days, you told me a story about, I think it was Apple. Could you retell that story?
That's a great story, actually. So we looked at a technology company in England, in the United Kingdom. It's actually a company that specializes in holography. And this is a little bit along the lines, Victor, of the software-defined light organization I was telling you about. So we made contact with this company, and they told us that there were a number of other companies looking to buy them, names you know well, and one of them was Apple. And the company had a very significant IP portfolio, which is where the value was. In the time that it took Apple to get approval to travel, to send people back to the United Kingdom to actually do the due diligence, we closed the deal. Convinced the owner that we were the right guys. We did the documents, complicated deal, we got the documentation done, we signed the deal, closed the deal, and had him out here in Newport Beach to celebrate. But that's the beauty of being a small, nimble family office. You know, we move at lightning speed. The fastest deal I've ever done from soup to nuts, which means someone said, hey, here's an opportunity to us actually recording, was 12 days.
How would you, first of all, Tom Crosby, the CEO of Pals, what might he have in mind that would end up connecting him with you? And how does Greg Casserly view Pals Sudden Service?
Let me talk about the second question first, right? How do I view it? And there'll probably be an answer as to how Crosby and I would connect. I view what they have created there as nothing short of extraordinary. It is a heroic effort to do what those guys have done. First of all, as I'm sure everyone's aware, quick service restaurants it's a really tough space to be in. Really hard margins, very tough unit volumes, even though they have extremely good unit volumes of plus 2 million per store. But it's just a fucking grind. It really is. It's a tough business to be in. But what he's done in terms of the recruiting, the training, getting people to understand why they do anything. I mean, you know how powerful that is? Actually, at any level in the organization, explaining why, that's extraordinary. So the culture of everybody does everything. Tom gets certified and calibrated. I love how he uses the word calibrate. A calibrated machine and a human being. I just love that. The attention to detail, the zero defects, the manufacturing approach. It's just brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. The smartest thing he did was, to reiterate in my opinion at least, the smartest thing is he has perfect alignment between the unit owner, even though they're not technically a real estate owner, but they are an owner and they own the business. They own the responsibility of the business, and they have a direct correlation to the wealth they're creating through the profit participation at the store. That's spectacular. My mantra in every deal we do, everyone's an owner. I don't do a deal that everybody in this organization doesn't have a piece of. Always varying, and we all agree on that. I have the last say in it, but it's based on what we think your contribution is going to be. If I'm lead on the deal, obviously I'm going to get more than if I'm support on the deal. So I just think Crosby's got a spectacular model. I think it's limited because of the geography. It's hard to get people together once a month if you're flying people across country. It's hard to get people to share common culture and language if you're not from the same region, because regional differences in this country are huge, as I'm sure we've all experienced. It's hard to stretch that span of control that Tom has. Every organization, the culture is driven by the guy at the top or the woman at the top. This stinks from the head. If it's really good culture, it's because Crosby's driving it. It's that simple. And he's got a natural limitation on how much he can do. We all do. So my problem with the business, and the reason if I did meet Tom after being extremely complimentary, and I'm sure he's making a very comfortable living on $60 million in revenue, he dropped that down pretty well, pretty easily for 3 people in the corporate office. So I'm assuming after he's paid everybody, right? So he's not. I mean, it's really hard to ramp that up. It's really hard to get that to $100 million business in that space, other than obviously adding more and more and more units, and there's a diminishing return in that business. So I think this thing, by definition, has its own natural, or I should say, an equilibrium that it will go to. And I'll give you a good example, Chris. When we were doing hotels, I was obsessed about understanding why we made more money in some hotels than others, blah, blah. So we created a very complicated econometric modeling tool, and we did a regression analysis. We found out, believe it or not, that the best number for us with Tarsadia's overhead and skill set and systems approach was 188 rooms. That happened to be the sweet spot. And I think Tommy was probably not, I don't think it's 28, but it's not going to be 280. He's going to have a sweet spot where he's just going to have to stop. Adding more units is not going to work. And it's not like these guys are adding units month by month by month.
Can I push back on this, Greg? Let me push back.
What's that?
Let me push back.
Yeah, of course.
It's a simple business. They have got it pushed to the left on the process continuum where they've taken the variation out. And I'm just thinking the reason it's not scalable for you is because it can't grow fast enough. But that doesn't mean that I appreciate the regional differences and all, but isn't there a way to scale this? Or are you thinking this is a Ferrari engine? I don't care how much variability is taken out, and there's something going on in Cass's head that says it all makes sense to some big investment types to bankroll this thing, but I can just see 10 years later the Otsus coming out, the opportunities to screw up. If only we hadn't done X, Y, or Z, or if only we had understood X, Y, or Z, we wouldn't have screwed up a great little corporation. And I don't know. I don't have any idea. What's going on in Cass's brain?
Well, look, like I said, I have a huge respect for what Tom's accomplished there. But let me ask you a simple question. How many people can Tom interview 12 to 18 times? How many books can he have them read? how involved can he really be before there's dilution in that all-important cultural underpinning?
Are you saying that the day Tom has a heart attack is the day the game is starting to slide, and he is in a gear set of their operational strategy and what makes them special? He is the drive gear that puts the torque to all the other gears, and if you take it out,
Well, it's got to be different, right? Obviously, but I don't know if it. I'm not saying it'll be, a disaster and it'll come undone. I'm sure there are other people that are like Tom, but it's not like he has a huge bench strength, and they don't like multi-unit managers. And he where's the next Tom in that organization? So my world, I've been here 20 years. I've been grooming my successor for 5, and I'll be here for another 5 to make sure that person is successful. There's no indication, at least in the case, there's no indication that any type of succession planning is going on. I think what did he call it? He called it basically a dictatorial democracy, which I love. I mean, I've been called a benevolent dictator because that's the way I run my business. But the truth of the matter is, Tom is essential. He's absolutely essential, and it defines the scope and the expandability on the existing model. Change Tom, things will change, but at some point, that magnificent secret sauce, not on the frickin' burger, but the secret sauce of the culture that they've developed, has to change by definition, which is what I think is the limiting factor.
Cass, this gets into what are critical lessons, concepts that have emerged in your mind as Cass's, if you are going to teach the course to the students. Oh, well, no, you are teaching the course right now. Okay? Give us Cass's pearls with regard to critical points that might not be important to the first job or whatever else, but they are, because it's like, wait a minute, PALS has got an operating system that is phenomenal. And Cass is saying that maybe we can replace him, but that's a huge if. And if it isn't done properly, well, it's obvious. And that isn't taught in business schools, right? It's like repeatable processes and all this. He won the Baldrige Award. But I'm guessing that the Baldrige quality examiners never thought about what you just asked, which is, how critical is Tom to this whole thing? And if you took him out, what's going to happen? So I'm positive that we're thinking the same way. What are Cass's big lessons? Big stuff, Cass. What's your philosophy of business? You've done well. What drives you?
Well, the answer to that question has changed substantially over the years, right? I'm an old guy now, so there's a whole different set of motivations in there than there was 35 years ago. And what drove me then was obviously to make as much money as possible, because I thought with resources, then I'd be able to do something even more spectacular than just make money, which is true, of course. But I will tell you, in reading the PALS case, I had so many flashbacks to being at Cornell with you, reading the great, what was it, In Search of Excellence, his first book, right? Tom Peters' first book. I remember we devoured that together, absolutely.
Passion for Excellence, right. Too.
That came along, right? So all those kind of academic constructs stuck with me, and at the same time, I'm taking courses, and the gift that you gave me, Chris, is you taught me how to think, even though I was just a kid at school. And God willing, I remember saying, imagine the impact on everybody's life if you could count the number of teachers that really made an impact in your life and not be restricted to, most people say 1 or 2. But what if it was 10? You know, what if there were 10 Chris Hart, Greg Casserly connections for every student in the world? What would I mean, it's unfathomable. But I'm just bringing it up to say to you, first of all, thank you, but also to let you know, in terms of the way I've codified the way I think about management, leadership, business, etc., having that perspective on taking the time to really think, because we're always too busy, we're always frantic, and there's never enough stillness around the concept to really try and find the truth. We're just so focused and under so much pressure to do something that we often don't do the right thing. And I was so thrilled to read Tom's perspective on hiring, because that's exactly the way I operate. If you called my CFO, Ron Adelhelm, right now and asked him, how many interviews did you have with Cass before Cass said, okay, we would like to invite you to join the company, he will tell you 17. Because the opportunity cost is catastrophic. And it's the same thing. There's so much urgency to make something happen, whether it's a business decision or a hiring decision. We usually meet someone and say, oh yeah, he can do the job or she can do the job, and they've got a pulse, so we hire them, and it literally has massive negative impact on the business over time. We don't lose anybody. I have lost one person here at Stadia at the partner. We invited them to leave the partner environment and go into an operating company and learn how to operate, which they did, and then they decided they wanted to go and pursue something else. But nobody leaves here because we spend so much freaking time on the front end making sure they're the right match to get in. 12 to 20 interviews, rigorous interviews, psychological testing, social constructs, dinners with the wife, anything and everything. I mean, one of my favorites was we took a CFO candidate to Disneyland, because it's just up the street here, and we own a bunch of hotels there. We made the guy stand in line for basically 17 hours, you know? Think about it. You're standing in line waiting so you can see the mouse. You're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. And it's not particularly pleasant waiting in line in this burning sun, but we figured out a way to connect and communicate, and you learn a lot, right? So I've been a little bit silly about it, but this concept, Chris, of really taking time. I mean, there's a beautiful quote. What makes music symphonic is the space between the notes, not just the notes. And we don't spend enough time in the space. So I try to bring a lot of space to the things we do here. And I have the luxury of that because I'm the guy at the top pushing people around to get things done. That's my job. My job is to create enough space between the notes to make sure the symphony sounds the way it's supposed to sound. Whether it's recruiting, whether it's underwriting a deal. Now, you might say, well, that flies in the face of you doing a deal in 12 days, Cass. I said, well, I tell you why. Because we're so good at developing our intelligence. When I got the call from Bill Reynolds and said, Cass, I've got an asset for you, it just went click. I didn't have to underwrite it. I knew it cold. I knew the numbers. I knew the location. I knew where all the bones were buried. I knew exactly how much I'd have to spend on top of what the acquisition cost was to turn it around. It was just done. That's why we can move fast, but that's because we did all our intel work up front. We're constantly in the market, collecting data, getting ready, so when we need to go, we can pounce. We don't go, we pounce. And that way we can get things done fast. But look, I hate to be cliche about it, but everything gets done through people. Take enormous pains to make sure you're working with the right people. It's really that simple. After that, make sure you develop some type of, and it can't just be lip service, you have to develop some type of guiding principle, mission, value system. You've got to have something that actually creates cohesiveness for people that they can rely on. They can go to it like an acid test. So, they can stop in a moment, they can say, well, how would that jive with our guiding principles? Oh, shit, I'm way off here. Or, oh yeah, maybe I'm right aligned with that. But There's a lot of lip service in a lot of organizations. Very few organizations take the time to actually reduce it to writing and talk about it. I'm doing my annual meeting starting Monday, actually, down at Rancho Valencia with all my partners. We'll spend an entire afternoon taking the written values and guiding principles of this company, breaking up into groups, and unpacking them vowel by vowel, and putting them back together to see if we believe that, yeah, they still mean what we think they mean and should mean, and have we, or maybe they've lost a little bit of the panache, maybe we need to change a word, you know what I'm saying, but a very sincere refocusing on, are these the things that drive us as a group of people, and are they not the sand, right, but the big rocks in the jar.
What are they? What are they?
Sorry?
What are they?
I'll give you a handful, okay? So one of my favorites is always give each other the benefit of the doubt. Always. And we added the word always a few years ago. It was just always give each other the benefit of the doubt for probably 10 years. And then a few years ago, we added the word always because we wanted to drive it home and reinforce it. But like, you get in a situation, it's a high stress situation in the business, for whatever reason, something happens and someone will go, well, fuck Chris, wake up. No, wait a minute. I know Chris. That doesn't sound right. Let's give the guy the benefit of the doubt. Let's go communicate with Chris. That, which is probably the second most important in the business, which is all communication has to be direct, open, and transparent. So I can't tell you how many times, for example, Victor, if you walked into me and you said, I need to talk to you about Chris, I would say, well, what did Chris say when you talked to him about it? And you'd say, well, I haven't talked to Chris yet. I said, well, then get the fuck out of my office. That's simple. We are absolutely obsessed by that. You have to be able to communicate directly to whoever is involved, and only when the conflict cannot be resolved at your level do you bring it up.
Why? Great.
You know how much time I spend resolving conflict? Less than 5% of my life. It used to be 95%. But with that one cultural tenet, it's less than 5%.
So, Greg, what I think I just heard was a zero defect principle about we prevent very costly defects, and those defects come under the heading of conflict, gossip. Put this into our old cost equality model we used to use.
Yeah, that's right on point. Right on point. And frankly, as we evolve, and you pick up any management journal these days, and I'm not saying the buzzword is culture. All I'm saying is finally there's some recognition of the importance of culture, because we're starting to understand the cost impact. And it is brutally expensive to have a suboptimal or dysfunctional culture. And 90% of the businesses I'm familiar with have exactly that. And that's why I go back to what Tom's done at PALS. I mean, as I read that case study, I got the sense that these people love working there and love working for this guy. I mean, not only is he helping them make money and run a very successful business, there's a sense of community, there's a sense of connection, they all make a great contribution, and they're all, most importantly, validated for what they do. They are the fundamental underpinnings for the psychological needs of any human being. This guy's got it nailed. And on top of that, I just get the sense they're having so much freaking fun. It's extraordinary.
Cass,
and
there are so many managers going back to Chainsaw Al Dunlap, where it's shareholder.
I was at a conference when Chainsaw Al gave his presentation, right?
Yeah.
He got done, and he said, "Any questions?" And everybody's like, "Nope, not one." He was so antithetical to what we're talking about. It left the crowd flat. Anyway, go ahead.
But you know, shareholder wealth is the God. spreadsheet analysis, predictive analytics, quantify it. And I haven't heard you talk about a spreadsheet. Hell, you're in the investment business, Cass. What are you getting at about business? Because, Neutron, Jack Welch, and clearly you have to make tough decisions too. But there's something that I'd like you to pluck out of Cass, which is your business philosophy, your personal operating strategy that you bring to any organization that you touch. What is the purpose of a business?
Yeah, well, I'll give you the exact conversation I had with the guys at our technology company, right? So we underwrite the business that passed all three tests because they're a brilliant team, best in class. It's an idea that will change humanity. This is the augmented reality platform, and the scale is ridiculous. I mean, it's in the billions. Okay, so I sit down with the lead guy and I say, here's our philosophy on what we're going to do for you. Nobody knows this space better than you, and frankly, nobody knows this space other than you, because this is truly open field running. I mean, there aren't any successful augmented reality companies in the world today. They just aren't. So it's truly open field running. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to pick a point in time, and we're going to give you a budget, and we're going to give you free reign. Okay? You've got to make smart choices. We've got to use all the cultural tenets that we always use. We've got to be rigorous about who we hire. We've got to have space around the decisions, all that stuff. But we're going to give you a pot of money and a bunch of time, and you've got to get us there. You've got to get us to, you've got to get revenue traction. You've got to get the ROI. And if you don't, then there will be obvious consequences. And then the burn gets slashed, and we lose a bunch of people, and we pivot. And that's exactly how I operate. But you have everything. You have every conceivable resource, opportunity, support, whatever language you want to use to be successful. And the reason I operate that way, Chris, is because I worked for a boss who said to me exactly the opposite. He said, I'll give anybody the opportunity to fail. That is one of the most motivating fucking things you could ever say to anybody on the planet, let alone a guy running one of the world's best sales forces. So my model is exactly the opposite. I'll give anybody, assuming we check the boxes and we agree on the first three legs of the stool, but if we have that rock solid platform, I'll give anybody the opportunity to succeed. And you want to take a moonshot? No problem. Worst case is we lose some money. Best case is there's a 10, 20 times payback. And we haven't lost any money yet.
What?
Because we've never lost money on a deal. Because we don't have to do every deal. We only take the deals that we feel like we spent so much time with that we can, in fact, nail. If I don't see it as a sure thing because I already know exactly how to underwrite it, we spend enough time to get to the point that we will.
Greg, so, who is your competition? I mean, it's are you in the business of Sequoia Capital Partners or these guys?
No, we're nothing like those guys. I mean, we're not a VC. We look a little bit more like a PE shop, but we're a family PE shop, and we take deep bets, and we have a very strategic relationship, deep relationships with the operators. I mean, these guys, Chris, these guys are my friends. So, the two brothers who run the pharmaceutical business, they're very dear friends. We're at each other's birthdays and anniversaries. The guys that run the technology company are very close friends. Relationships, frankly, are the most important thing. If you get the relationships right, there's lots of ways to make money. People put too much mystery around making money. For fuck's sake, it's been going on for millennia. It's not complicated. It really isn't. And the financial engineering and producing the spreadsheets aren't that complicated. They're essential. Don't get me wrong. It's not like we're not underpinning the business and underwriting everything we're doing. It's just not what we lead with.
So I hear you describing your competitive advantage because everybody can do the basics of the analysis, the mechanical, use this concept, do this Porter 5 forces, and you're saying, and they can all do that. What makes us special is it some other capabilities? Is it a capability? And how scalable is your organization? Are you Tom Crosby, or maybe you have a guy who's capable of doing that, but at some point, you hear where I'm going, can you only be so big?
Yeah, well, the difference between Tommy and me is Tommy's constrained by what each unit will do, right? He's not going to get much better than a couple of $1 million at one of these hamburger joints. And I'm not sliding it, because obviously those numbers are terrific. But I'm constrained by one thing, which is my time. And so I have to decide which portfolio companies and opportunities I want to spend time on. But Chris, our generic drug business is worth $10 billion just by itself. I spend the same amount of time on that than I would on one $2 million hamburger store, or $60 million business if you want to roll it all up, which is probably a fairer way to do it. So the constraint is we're so diverse, and we want to be diverse by definition. So if there's anything adverse, if there's a correction in the marketplace, then let's say it hurts us in pharma, probably won't hurt us in real estate or financial services or tech, and vice versa. So we want to be diversified because obviously that mitigates risk. And then we're only really constrained by what the opportunity of the business is. And so our financial services business has a very, very high ceiling. So does pharma, so does tech. Real estate's probably the most limited. But that's the fundamental difference. I'm constrained by my time. I'm not constrained by the businesses that I'm in. Tommy's only option really is to add another store or a bunch more stores. If I sell a portfolio company and realize a several $billion-dollar gain, then I'll take that cabbage and just plow it back into another opportunity, several opportunities like that. So it's multiple, it's scale. That's the issue for us, it's scale. That's one thing I learned coming out of class with you years ago is exactly why I decided to go to work for Levin, where I could do hundreds of deals, versus Jack DeBoer at Residence, where I do 30 deals. It's all about scale.
Cass, what are, looking at yourself, in your own pros and cons, what are your weaknesses?
They're numerous. take a long time to cover them all. But I really don't like spending a lot of time managing the minutiae of the business. I'm not a good audit officer. I'm not a good. Frankly, I'm much better spending time on the strategy, sales, managing the people side of the business than I am on the compliance side of the business, okay? And there's a host of activities that need to get done, and they're just as valuable. I'm not good in a maintenance function. So, you and I wrote an article, which means you wrote it, and I got my name on it, on product life cycle 35, 40 years ago, whatever it was. I've maintained the discipline to think about where the business is in the life cycle and where I am in my life cycle, and try to marry those two things. So high growth, high levels of abstraction, real messy businesses that really need lots of systems approach and managing the people and get the right button on the right seat, all that kind of stuff. Fantastic. Put me in a maintenance function where it's chugging along, and we have those businesses, and God bless, because they pay a lot of bills. They're fantastic cash flow, but it's a waste of my time. And it's not, and so fundamentally it's a weakness because I can't adapt to do it.
Except, and this is where I'm thinking perhaps this is the best place to end, because this is terrific. What you're describing is you, Greg Casserly, you are a production operation with a operating strategy that involves trade-offs. And you're saying putting my time into maintenance functions is not a good use of resources or my capabilities. The resource, the time, the capability is it's what you're able to do and think. And so I'd like you to address to the students what must they do in understanding themselves as capabilities that have certain trade-offs that they can't violate because it's just not them. Kind of life advice, in other words.
Yeah, but that's such a great question.